we're going to essentially start off from where we were yesterday with doing the labs in ArcGIS. And we're going to spend about the first hour to 2 hours this morning working with ArcGIS and working through the training manual that I gave you yesterday, doing a few things. I'm going to do a lot less telling you what to click and letting you click and make the mistakes yourselves, because that's honestly how you learn, is you do something wrong and how do I fix it now? Except for this, that was my problem, so you don't need to fix that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a lecture, and I'm going to talk about spatial analysis and spatial processes, and then we're going to use a different software called Geoda. And it's less the software that I want you to learn in the afternoon with the second set of labs. I don't really need you to learn the software at all, but it's the concepts that I'm looking at there, and it's doing some sort of spatial analysis concepts and concepts of clustering, concepts of spatial heterogeneity, and things like that. So it links back to spatial statistics. And if you remember if any of you took the statistics course, it'll link back to some of that sort of thing, where we have autocorrelation, but we have spatial autocorrelation, and things like that. So what I want to start off today is I want to start off with joining data. So if people can load up ArcMap, and go to your catalog. And does everyone have a folder connection still, or do we need to make a new folder connection to your NB data? People don't have one? So if you remember how to make a folder connection, you use this little button up here that says Connect to Folder. And we can click that and navigate to wherever you downloaded your NB data folder. Everyone's is in different spots. So I'm not going to tell you where it is. Most people it's on the desktop. Some people it's on their USB key. Some people it's on the H drive. Some people it's somewhere else in the C. So do that and make a folder connection to that. Oops. And then when you get that folder connection, can I get people to add the CSD file? You can also do that through the add data portion as well. But add the CSD layer to your view. Yeah, and it all works drag and drop. If you drag from Arc Catalog, you can drag it. You can't drag from Windows Explorer. You can't drag a file from Windows Explorer and add it into ArcMap. That won't work. So the next thing, once you have the CSD layer added in here, the next thing I would like you to do is I would like you to add the data table, one of these data tables that we copied over. So if you go to your Add Data button, and go to your census folder, and there's this CSD11 send.dbf. We want to add that to the view. We want to add the .dbf file. It's a .database file. It's an older type of format. And a .dbf, if you remember our shape files, the data on a shape file is stored in dbf format, otherwise known as dbase. Okay, so now we have, everyone should have the data table in there. So when you get the CSD file, you can open it up by right-clicking and going open, and that'll show you the files. And this is what we had yesterday when I was very excited that we had some real data in there. We're going to join this to our CSD table. So to join, we right-click on our CSD table and go to Joins and Relates. This is on page 26 of your workbook. I have a beautiful image there showing us how to do that. You right-click on your CSD layer and go Join, and it'll load up the box that's on page 27. So it'll look like that. And it'll match. And now if we look at our drop-down box, it should have CSD11 CEN populated in the middle box. In our first one, we'll choose, don't click OK yet for people. Okay. You're going to want to do several options. You want to make sure that the table you're joining to this layer is CSD11 CEN. You're going to want to choose CSD UID as the from column and the to column as CSD UID. So this is the field in the layer. Remember, this is a layer, and this is the field in the table, and this is the table. So those are equivalent identifiers. They're the same field type. They're both string. They're the same field length. And they have corresponding identifiers. I mean, it's not that hard. We deal with this all the time, right? Similar identifiers. We're going to want to make sure that we're only going to keep matching records. OK? Very important before you click OK. And we can click the Validate Join. And it should say that you're going to have 273 of 5253 matching records.
No matches found.
So if you're joining the census DBF table to the CSD data layer.
Yeah, I don't know. That matches what?
CSD UID.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
If you join the wrong identifier to the wrong identifier, you will get no matches found. So if you get the 273, then you can click OK and see what happens. It's just New Brunswick.
Yes.
So I've only downloaded the census tables for New Brunswick, right? Because that's where we are. Now if you go back to our view table, we go back to our navigation tools and we click our full extent button, which is the little globe, if we click that, it should, no, it's going to only go to that. Well, we can zoom in just on New Brunswick here now. And now we have just New Brunswick. And if we open the table, if I get everyone to open the CSD table, we'll now see at the end of the table, if we scroll all the way to the end of the table, another CSD UID, and we'll see our population data hanging out at the end. So we'll have our other table at the end. We're going to want to do one other thing for doing this. I'm also going to want you guys to do the NHS to join the NHS table to this as well, which is the National Household Survey. So what I want you guys to do that is if I can get you to add, so we're going to rename the current, this layer here that we have in here, which is the census linked to the New Brunswick census divisions. If we can rename this census. right? So we now have a layer in here called census. And we can actually add in another copy of the CSD file. So I want you to rename the one that we linked census and then add another copy of the CSD file in there. So you should have now one named census, and that will be joined up to the census data. And then we'll have another one, which is our raw CSD file, and it's not joined to anything yet. So if we open its attribute table, we'll see it's not joined to anything. We're going to want to eventually join to the NHS table. I will. Okay? So what you're going to end up with two files in here. And you can rename the second one NHS. Now, on the bottom of page 28, sorry for the lab. On the bottom of page 28, I ask you guys to join the NHS table to this census subdivision file. And I want you to specify to keep all records, not just matching records. So you guys can go ahead and do that. The NHS data table is the second of those tables that I told you to do it. It's what? It's NHS. It's CSD 11 NHS.DEF. So I'm doing it right now in front of you in case you're wanting to watch me. I'm adding this NHS data table. And if I want to join it to the NHS, I am going fast. NHS is just the CSD file. I renamed it NHS. And you want to join the data, you want it to look like this. You want to join to whatever this layer you've called here, the other CSD layer, and you want to join the CSD11 NHS table via CSD UID and CSD UID, and want to keep all records. If you want to get your send, I'll show you that in just a second.
So I move that here. That's good.
Yep.
And then what? Then I click on this
You
one?
right-click on the CSD file.
Here.
Yep, and go joins and relates. And go join. And then choose the NHS table. And then join from CSD UID to CSD UID. And keep all records.
Keep all records?
Keep all records.
Okay.
And hit
I don't
OK.
have to validate join?
You can if you want. Validate doesn't actually, it's just a double check for you.
And you can join except the DBF files.
See, our colors are the same.
Yep.
You can join except the DBF files.
You can join any files. Yeah, lots of different kinds of files. click on the view by drawing order, which is down one,
So what it is?
that one, and you can move census above NHS.
Okay, now I want
So once you've done that, this is fine.
Okay.
So what you end up with once you've joined it and you open your NHS table, you're going to end up with all these what appear to be null values. But if we scroll through them, we'll eventually get down to some that have some values. So for those of you who have joined the two data, the two data sets, you can start going off onto the next thing on page 29 and start doing queries. Okay? So for those of you who have continued on, you can start going off and doing that. You're going to want to add your populated place, the pop place points, add that to your map display as well. But you can start moving ahead and doing queries, because doing queries is kind of I've done the query here for you. Those people who are doing the query, you'll see I've done it there. In my instructions, the PRUID is, the UID isn't capitalized, but ArcGIS capitalized all the attribute names. But it doesn't really make, caps, no caps doesn't really make, it's not case sensitive. So just keep, if you've done the query and stuff like that, you can just keep going, eh? So the next section is creating a new map and spatial data layer. So we can just move from whatever our query was. There's something which I neglected to show really in detail for people, and I noticed a few people are having a bit issues now that we're getting multiple versions of the same file in there, because we're really just working with the CSD layer, census subdivision layer. We're naming it different things, linking it to different data, but it's the same original data source that we're using. So if we look up on our this left-hand side here of the screen, and we see these different layers, we click here in the table of contents. There was a list by source and a list by drawing order. If I list by source, it tells me all the different sources that I have. Here are two layers, NHS and census. They sit in the whatever fold. Everyone's got different folders where they sit. Desktops, memory sticks, H drives, whatever. It tells us where they are, and it gives us these files. If I want to change the drawing order here, I can't do it, right? These two things are here. I can't change the order in which these draw in. If I go here and click the list by drawing order, all I see are my spatial data layers. I don't see the attribute tables anymore, because those don't have a drawing order, right? We can't draw on a map an attribute table per se, right? It doesn't have any spatial data. Here I can change my order. I can move my NHS below my census. So here I've got census. Let me just clear my selection. So my census, you see I've already selected out just the New Brunswick. If I drag this down below NB data, or NHS, it disappears, right? Because it's now drawing underneath it. And they're exactly the same thing. So it's the same as if I added my populated places. Right? So I add my populated places in here. And then you see all my little dots there on the screen? I drag my populated places below it, and I can't see any of them, except for the little one sitting on the island over here. But I can't see them because you guys can figure out why. It's because we have polygons sitting on top of points, so they cover it, right? So I can now, in my drawing order, I can drag it up and make it visible at the top. And I can drag my census and put it above the NHS, and now it's visible. So that's how we change what order layers are drawn in. And this drawing order is the same as when we eventually produce an output map that we would want to print. It's the same drawing order that we would get on the output map. So we can stack things up.
So when we saved that file, we wanted to save this later.
We can say, which one? The NHS?
Yeah.
We can save this as a separate layer. We don't have to do that, actually. This just creates the ArcMap, ArcGIS, when we save the project file, so when we actually hit, file, save the project, this MXD document, it'll remember how things are drawn, what order they're drawn in, what link they're linked to, and all that sort of stuff. So when we load it back up again, it'll do all that stuff again for us automatically. We're not going to have to relink our data. It'll link it all back up, join up our data. It'll join it all back up again for us. You don't actually know. You don't actually have to save it out. So I've just noticed a few people losing their data, and it's hiding in behind the other data. I had some questions here with the and some. So people who are exporting the data, if we do this export the data, when we do once we have our selection set, we right click and we go data, export data. I forgot one very important thing. When we choose our type, when we go save our data and we choose where we want to save it to, you have to go to this drop-down box here at the bottom and choose shapefile. And shapefile is a different data type. That's the .shp that was there yesterday. If we choose a personal geodatabase, personal geodatabase is another file type, and it's actually an access database. So it's going to want to create a new access database file and save it as a table within the access database. So it's just a different file format, but it's not one that we're working with today. So when you're exporting it, choose it as a shapefile and call it whatever you want. And that's what you had done. You had exported it as a personal geodatabase. And now if I export it here, now you can see I've created this export output file, export_output file here, and it's the .dbf shp shx that we saw yesterday. It has this other lock file here too. That just says that the file's in use. Don't worry about that. So if I do some of you have a different thing in the drop-down box. I'm using ArcGIS 10.1 and you're using ArcGIS 10.0, I think is the difference. There are some people asking me who are doing the step where we're actually where we're getting this population change part, and they're asking me what they're looking at here. So if I look at pop changes, the population change between 2011 and 2006, so we can have negative values, and we do in New Brunswick because we have depopulation in certain areas. I also have median age. And that's the median age within the CSV. If I hit this classify button, as I've asked people to do, you get this distribution. And what you're looking at is you're looking at the distribution of the attribute values. So this is the same as if you were to take a median age column in Excel and create a chart of it, and just create a distribution of the values in it, right? So this is the number of observations, and this is the values within there. So it just creates a distribution of what those values are. So it's just a quick way of viewing what your data is. And this is this is what we're doing when we're going to classify our data by population change. I noted that there's all sorts of different ways to classify your data. We can do it, equal interval. We can do it standard deviational. And this just does a quick distribution on how many standard deviations from the mean. So it's, kind of neat, quick ways of looking at your data. And then when you view it, you can chunk up your data in different ways. So, and each way, if you play around with it and see how it looks on the map, it can look quite different, and highlight different things about your data. Yeah, just give me 1 second here. I just wanted to do. It's exactly where I expected us to be, so don't worry. We all work at different paces, and some people are off mapping CMAs, so that's good. That's excellent. So if you have any questions for me, then ask me and I'll try and answer them. And when we come back, we might step back and do lecture again, and I'll